Good morning, everyone. I just wanted to take a few minutes to cover some common asphalt workbook issues that I see out in the field. I'd say about 80% of the projects I've worked on the last few years, whether it be DOT staffed or consultant staffed, have at least one of these issues. First, I want to start with make sure you're using the current version of the Microsoft Office software. I believe this workbook was created with Office 365, so older versions of this Microsoft Office have problems specifically calculating the FAA. So make sure we're running the most current Microsoft Office software. So as Travis stated earlier, you have this job mix formula and you have these target control values for the sieves. So what you want to do is make sure, you're starting at the beginning of, you just arrived on site, the plant's been running for an hour, you're hauling in your equipment, you're setting up your equipment, the lab, and making sure the bath temperatures are correct. And you're probably going to be sampling within a half hour to an hour. So you open this workbook and you're trying to type in what you need in there as fast as you can. And what I've noticed is this is probably where mistakes are happening. So what I would say is when you fill this out, lean on someone else, whether it be someone else in the lab or maybe even the project engineer. They have some skin in the game, and they're the ones copying the information from the workbook into cars and also generating the estimate. I would have them double check this master copy, specifically the target values, the aggregate properties, that everything is typed in correctly. Because you don't want to be 5-10 days into the paving process and you all of a sudden notice that these values are wrong and aggregate gradations were actually failing, and then we missed that opportunity to correct it before the 10 days. So lean on someone else to check your work just to make sure that your master copy is good to go. This is the summary page of the mix design. You can check that work. You have your sieves here. You have the target values under the virgin column. And these values match directly into the sieves up there. Next thing I want to cover, and this is the number one factor that I see out in the field, is the aggregate properties. Specifically, this coarse and fine columns usually get switched around. Now this did say fine back in the past and coarse here, and those did get switched, but when you're typing in these values, ensure that it's going under the coarse and the fine. You can find that information, I believe it's on page 3 of the mix design under the bulk specific gravity. Here you have your material up here, there's your coarse and your fine, and you just input the numbers from the mix design specifically into those columns. This is what happens when you don't, if the columns are switched around. Here's the correct way to type it in. And then over here, I have the 2 columns switched. So you see that your dry bulk specific gravity numbers are different. And in this case, it worked out into their favor. They thought they were getting an FAA 42, but in reality, it was an FAA 43 after the problem was noticed and the workbook was corrected. Another thing I see on the workbook is sometimes this number is not typed in. This is the oil pounds per gallon, and you find this on the manifest. Now, if you have an oil supplier that is hauling from North Dakota, normally these numbers are printed on the manifest. However, if you have someone, oil supplier from Canada, they don't print that number, so therefore you take the density number times the unit weight of water, which is 8.33, take your oil pounds per gallon and put it on the summary page, and then it will show up on your totalizer page right here. Once this number shows up, then it continues to finish the calculations automatically for you for each test in the percent. Another thing I've noticed in the recently is sometimes these numbers don't get filled out. This does not auto compute for you. These have to automatically be entered. And once these are entered, added up and entered down below, it'll it'll show up your cutoff comparison report. Let's jump over to the FAA sheet. Travis covered this a little bit. The field sample number, you'll have some weird value or it'll be blank. If your FAA is not computing, it's because you need to hit the drop-down menu here and choose your test number that you're working on. Otherwise, you will get these value symbols. You'll also get value symbols if your blend is not in the mixed data page. Once you type these in, then the FAA pulls this information and computes your FAA once you type in the blend here. And of course, if there's a blend change somewhere throughout the project, you want to make sure that blend change corresponds to the test you're working on and carries on until the end of the job or the next blend change. If you have the wrong blend in there, you're going to have the wrong FAA value. And this is what happens when you have, let's just say you're mistyped the number or you weren't paying attention or you're just in a hurry. Here's the correct way to type it in. Perhaps someone got in a hurry here and flipped the two columns around between the dust and natural fines. Once again, you can see how it changes the dry bulk specific gravity. And in this case, they thought they had an FAA 42, but it was really an FAA 41. And I've seen it go all the way down to an FAA 39, and we're probably like 6 days into paving. So make sure that you want lean on someone, like I said, either it be someone in the lab or a project engineer to double check and keep up with these bin values so we know what's going on from day to day. The last thing I want to cover is the materials drop box in cars. So we want the entire Excel workbook, asphalt workbook in cars. That way we can, and we know it, like you have to do cores the next day, but try to get it in there as soon as possible. That way, like the materials coordinators can go in there and look, and if there is an issue with the workbook or the material that we see, we can try to, head off any issues and not find out at the end of the job. We'd like to be able to pull the workbooks and just take a look, glance at it, compare it against the mixed design, make sure things are just a double check, a triple check, really, just to make sure things are going the way we expected with the workbook. Materials and research also pulls data, usually in the wintertime, from projects so they use it for research purposes. So we'd really appreciate if you could put the Excel document, the entire asphalt workbook into cars.